Hey guys, I wanted to show you an older piece that I did and kind of walk you through a little bit of how I created it. This is for the amazing comic Headlopper by Andrew McLean. It's one of my favorite artists. It's one of my favorite books out there right now as well. So it was really fun to be able to do a piece for him. This is the finished piece that I did, which I colored myself. But it started with this sketch here, which looks like I drew in Photoshop. And most likely what I did was something to the effect of sketching very lightly. Oops. Very lightly, kind of just sketching an outline thing first. Like really super sketchy of what the pose would be. And then I would create another layer and tighten up the sketch. And I changed the opacities on the pen and the paper and all that. Or paper as in the levels, the layers that I'm working on in Photoshop. And just keep tightening it up. And usually I'll do 2 to 3 maybe of tightening and tightening and tightening. Unfortunately, I didn't save that process when I did these pencils here, so I just have this one layer here. I believe I then printed this out. Once I drew this, I printed it out in what's called non-repro blue. So in Photoshop, if you go up here to the images, go to mode, if it's in, I think it only works in grayscale, I can then turn it into where it says duotone here. That duotone then lets you pick out a shade. You could actually print out in any single one of these shades. But somewhere right up here where it's like really light blue, that's usually what I'll do. I'm going to cancel because I like the shade that I picked. And what it'll do is it'll print out looking like this, in this shade of very light blue. Now you can ink directly on top of this when you print it out in, off of your printer. You can ink directly on top of it, and then when you scan it back in, you won't be able to see the blue lines. They don't pick up, they don't scan. Another way to do it is kind of old school. What I would do is I would just print this out on like photocopy paper, 11 by 17 photocopy paper, and then lightbox it. Because I started out most of my comics career, especially Powers, was all like lightboxing my layouts that I either blew up from a sketchbook or I drew on these 11 by 17 reels. That's out of focus now. Okay. Anyway, so I printed this out on non-repro blue. We'll do another lesson or whatever about the composition of a page and how I laid out and what my choices were on here. Largely, it's a relatively circular composition, with him in the middle. His sword here and his arms are framing his face. The objects such as the head, the hand, the other hands that are attacking him and stuff, it's all sort of circled around him. I don't do that kind of composition a lot, but it really worked here. I like it. It's like a little swirl kind of composition. I don't worry about the details. The way that I draw, especially because I draw in really simple shapes, I don't need all the details when I'm penciling out. So this is about it. This is about as tight as I get with my pencils. So let's go over and look at the inks. So these were the inks. So obviously I flipped the composition because I felt, this is a tough one. Objects usually go, or your eye always goes left to right, up to down. So it's arguable that the other composition works better, but because his arm would be, or his swipe of the action is going like this. But I kind of like the fact that the order in which you're reading these, it works either way. I like it better this way. Even though the action is really going from this way, I like how your eye is reading the page going from left to right. And again, the main thing is less about the swoop of the action, it's about his face being framed here in between the sword and his arms. So with composition, you can create shapes that will focus the eye on an object. or kind of guide the viewer's eye to where you want to punctuate. And for me, it was just all about this because I love his design. It's just such an amazing design that Andrew came up with. So more than likely on the original, which I don't have in front of me, I'm not sure where it is. I don't know if I sent it to Andrew or if it's in a pile someplace. I have so much art. I'll do a nice walkthrough at some point when I clean up the studio, and you can see how much art I have. I don't sell a lot of it, and I keep all of it. And there's so much. It's a lot. Anyway, what I probably did was I inked this with. I can get the brush. Oh, it would help if I don't drop it. Okay. So I inked it with this brush. It's called I'm not pronouncing it correctly, a Karatuge brush. I'll put a link on here too for the brush. And what I like about this brush, I mean, real brushes are always better because you're going to get more of a randomness at it than you will with these brushes. But these are amazing. What I love about them is I don't have to dip the ink, which it doesn't seem like it would take up a lot of time, but believe me, it does. It eats up a lot of time while you're working. And I'm all about speed and proficiency. So I really like this brush. It has a refillable pen. It's not technically refillable, but I refilled it anyway with a needle. So I brought a needle, off of Amazon. I got like a box of needles, like a junkie. And yeah, I use those needles to refill this pen. And I'll walk you through that process at some point in the future, how I do that and what ink I use and all that. So anyway, that's what I inked it with. These large black areas, more than likely, I left when I inked them, and I just filled them in Photoshop with a bucket drop. So something like this. What's fun about the bucket drop too is sometimes I'll accidentally fill in an area, or I'll just go ahead and purposely fill in stuff like this, and I'll find a new composition with the blacks that I wasn't expecting to use before. Unfortunately, that usually means covering up something I drew that I really liked, but sometimes that's what you have to do. Like that might have, no, that wouldn't work. But no, looks like I got it right. Anyway, it's really fun to play around with and try different stuff. Maybe that would have worked. Anyway, that's all I can really think about the inks. It was drawn traditionally, well, no, it was laid out in digital, inked traditionally, scanned in, then finished digitally. Now let's see if I can figure out what I did with the colors, because I didn't label my layers here, which would have helped. My problem, one of my great weaknesses is because I trained myself to work fast first and well secondly. So I still have some really bad habits of just moving forward without thinking about the process. And I'm comfortable with that to the extent that I like that I'm instinctive. I like that I work from my gut. But it does make it difficult sometimes when I'm backtracking on work like this or even explaining the process to other people. But I'm going to do my best. So this looks like the background layer. Usually what I do is I'll start colors, and I'm not a great colorist or traditional colorist, but I'll start with the figure. And it looks like what I did here, I laid in this color for his flesh tone. It looks like, no, it doesn't. I thought maybe I did a very slight fade of it kind of looks like it is. It looks a little dark up here than down here. So I think I probably did like a 10% or 5% fade or something, so that it went from a lighter tone to a slightly darker tone. On another layer, this outline here, which I used a pen with a texture to it, I probably did on another layer and then flattened it down. Often you want to keep those layers separate because if you make a mistake or you want to change it, now I'd have to go through and kind of be a pain in the butt to fix all of this and to cover it up. Other times you flatten it, it's just part of the process and you just accidentally do it and you move on because you're looking at so much. If I was better organized, making folders within folders and all that kind of stuff, that would make sense. But I know it seems like too much for me. It's just, I'd rather just be moving on, work with my mistakes. So I did some highlights on here. I don't think I really used traditional flatting on here. I think I just put in the exact colors that I wanted. You should flat because it makes it easier to change things around. But sometimes with a pinup or a single image, it's kind of easy to just use the colors that you want. I think that's what I did, because this goes back a couple years ago. This is only 2016. Feels like I did this way longer ago. Anyway, so these are the foreground colors, and you notice they're all cool colors. They're all blue and kind of aqua color and greenish. So one of the few things that I know works well is to choose opposite tones for your foreground and your backgrounds. So that means the foreground here is cool colors. They're cool tones, colors you associate with cold. The blue and like an aqua green and cool colors, right? So then the background, I use opposite colors, which are hot colors, red colors, warm colors. And it looks like I did 2 levels of backgrounds here. I'm not sure why. All right, that's just the lava. And then lava, I used the paint bucket tool, where you can use your paint bucket as a gradient tool. So let's grab 2 colors here. Grab a random blob. All right, here's 2 ugly colors I just picked out just to kind of show you if you're not familiar. So let's say I select an area like here. Then I'll use a gradient tool. And it literally is a gradient. It combines these 2 colors that I chose. And you can get different effects by making it go in further directions and how far apart you span the beginning point and the end point. So that's what I did with the lava. And red and yellow are both hot colors, warm colors, and it helps create a sense of depth. So that was the attempt there. So then the very background, this was a lot of fun, and again, this would have been on several layers. So in the far background, I had the lava just all in red. The sky going from orange to a red, because even the orange and the yellow contrast against each other once they're together. But this was a lot of fun because I like using textures. We'll get deeper into that in another walkthrough of different kind of brushes that have different effects. What I probably did here was I selected just this smoke area and just laid it down in this singular color, or actually it looks like I did another gradient of like kind of a brownish to a grayish, or light brownish to a darker brownish. And then on top of that there was another white layer where I did this effect for the smoke. And then on top of that, one other layer was this lightning effect. And what I did with the lightning, again, we'll walk through this in a tighter layout some point. I just drew these white crackle lines for the lightning, and then I used a blurring effect, which gives it this kind of glow to it, this very subtle glowing effect. But I don't have the layers on here, so I can't really show you. But that's how you get this glowing effect, is with this slight blur. I'm sure there's different ways of doing it. It's probably better ways of doing it, but that's what I learned. And then one of my very last steps is I just take a pure white brush and at 100% opacity just create highlights. And by doing this, I always keep on another layer because it's tricky. It's hard to tell when I should use more light and less light for highlights. But I keep that on another layer as well. It's a lot of fun. So I don't know how useful that is, but that's a bit of my process on here, kind of breaking it down backwards. Go from there to here. And I will attach the color layer and this ink layer and the pencils down below. so you have it all to kind of look at. Feel free to ask me questions, and hope you guys are having a good day, and I'm going to get back to work. Thank you so much for supporting me, for whether it's a couple bucks or more or whatever. I'm really enjoying Patreon. I really like being able to spend time off of Twitter and other social media places, which are, whatever. And I'm just having a really good time talking to you guys. Let's have some more back and forth, and I'll do my best to make this the best possible experience for you. And yeah, that's it. I'll talk to you soon.